Recording in progress.
All right, we're going to call the Thursday, January 16th business meeting of Narberth Borough Council to order. Mr. Sounds, will you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stops. Or if it's
Okay, Council President, Mr. Bush.
here.
We have Vice President, Ms. Rickards. Here. We have Councilmember Ira Winston.
Here.
Hi, Ira. All right, Councilmember Jean Burrock. Here. Councilmember Jim Spear.
Here.
Councilmember Michael Galdini.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Salmonson.
Here.
And Mayor Andrea Deutsch.
Here.
I do have some brief comments. So I realize there's a lot of public interest in property at 201 Sabine, so this is relatively minor news, but I'm going to share it. We had a request from, on behalf of someone who runs a private school to have a walkthrough of the property. This would represent a change from what council had envisioned for the property, so we are going to be discussing this request in executive session today. As of now, the borough has made no response to this request, and I don't actually know the name of the principal, just the agent who reached out to us. So if that goes any further, we will, of course, inform the public. Let's move on to the mayor's report.
Okay. Tonight I am honored to recognize one of our police officers who as you will hear, engaged in an act of bravery and courage and really represented the borough very nicely. So on behalf of Kelly Lynn, Officer Kelly Lynn, I'd like to read the letter. On behalf of Narberth Borough, I'm honored to commend you for your extraordinary actions on December 24th, 2024 at Narberth Station. On this day, a tragic accident occurred when a woman crossing the tracks was struck by a departing train. Your immediate response to her cries for help exemplifies the courage and dedication to public safety that we strive for every day. Without hesitation, you sprang into action, ensuring the woman was safely removed from under the train, and thanks to your efforts, paramedics were able to treat her promptly and she was transported to the hospital with only minor injuries. Your quick thinking and bravery in such an urgent and potentially dangerous situation are a testament to the professionalism and commitment to protecting the lives of those in our community. This incident highlights not only the critical role that law enforcement officers play in emergency situations, but also the profound impact of your dedication and service. We're incredibly proud of you to have you as part of our team and deeply grateful for your exemplary work. Please accept this letter as a formal recognition of your outstanding actions, and thank you for your continuing service and unwavering commitment to the safety of the community.
Thank you, Officer Lynn.
All right.
She's on duty, so.
And that is it.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Deutsch?
Can I just add that literally 3 days later, I saw somebody crossing the tracks. I don't know how to,
In Narberth?
in Narberth, at the train station, while a train was coming to the station, they were running across the tracks to get on the train. I don't know how we can emphasize any more. It's just
get on the next damn train.
And to those who are listening and hearing, if you are running for a train, the train specifically will not pick you up, even if you arrive. It's their policy not to encourage this behavior, which is incredibly dangerous and puts lives at risk. So I would beg everybody to please never, ever do that. There is no safe way to do it across the tracks. There's a tunnel underneath, go underneath or around. Do not ever cross the tracks. It's just a danger, it's not worth it.
Our police department is great, but they can't save everybody. So
That's right,
please
that's right.
do
This
not.
woman was so lucky. I mean, she was so lucky that the train had separated her shoe. She had the sole of her shoe, and the sole of her shoe was separated from the top of her shoe. It was that close. She was under the tracks with the tire on the sole of her shoe. Don't do it. There is no safe way to do it.
There are people who do get struck, you know,
And-
not
yeah.
along this line, in Ardmore and Devon,
Oh,
just the last
absolutely,
year.
absolutely, and it's almost never the outcome that we had on the December 24th. It's almost always a terrible outcome. So, yeah, please don't do that.
Thank you, Mayor Deutsch. Thanks, everyone. Ms. Hobbs.
Yes, so wanted to just thank everybody for your warm welcome this past month as my first official full month here. So a lot of my time has just been getting acclimated, finding out where things are saved on SharePoint, and doing meets and greets with a lot of folks. So some of the main things have just been to prepare for council meetings. So we met with our various boards and commissions. I've met many of our vendors, professional consultants, and volunteer members, some of whom I recall from having worked here before, so it's been great to reconnect with people I know and meet some new people. The North Narberth Avenue Bridge project is moving forward, so we've had a couple of project updates on that. I have no major news to update, but there are things that are going through the pipeline, so that is working its way forward. I hope to have a more concrete update for you in the near future. We also coordinated with a couple of our volunteer groups who are running some of the events. So we did meet with the folks of the Take a Breather Foundation to plan for their 5K run. That is scheduled for Saturday, April 26th. We do have that on the Borough calendar. Not on my report, but just this week I did also meet with somebody to discuss the potential to have the Oktoberfest. I understand that this was an event that had happened in the past, and then there was a pause in it, and so looking to do that again. So we don't have a final date on that yet, so we did start those tentative discussions that will be coming before council, I believe either February or March, so I will update you as I have more information. Just as a reminder for everybody, we do still have the draft master park plan is open for public comment. We are accepting public comment through Monday the 20th, so just a couple more days left to submit those public comments. The intent is that after the comment period is closing, then we will review the comments. Simone Collins will make any edits to the plan in keeping with the comments that they receive, and then it will be before this body for approval and adoption on the February 20th business meeting. And then finally, we did have an internal staff meeting to meet with the property owner of 100 Essex Avenue to discuss a possible land development plan. Nothing has been submitted yet, so we are waiting for the property owner to supply us with an application, so they're working through what they need to do on their end, and I'll again update you if and when that comes forward.
Fantastic. And the master parks plan is on the Borough website.
It is, yes. So we have been advertising that. We refreshed all of our advertisements on social media, so our Facebook, our Instagram, and then the link to the plan as well as the survey is available on the Borough website.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Let's move on to public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes, and please begin with your name and your address. So, get my time set up. We'll start with folks in the room, so starting in the front row. Would you like to make a public comment, sir?
Well, yes. My name's Peter Prince, and I live at 122 Conway Avenue. And I'd like to have, it's probably addressed to the chief of police, some basic rules of the snow removal. So far, I've incurred over $250 in permits or fines because I didn't move my cars fast enough off the side. So what is it like it's snowing now? Do I have to move the car with just a dusting of snow, an inch off the road? I mean, I'm not sure who to address this question to. And that's the problem. I didn't move my vehicle off the side of the road quick enough, and I've incurred over $250 in fines, the tickets.
Okay. Well, I think
So I'm not sure who to address this question to. And the other question is, you can get a permit for your vehicle for Sabine Avenue parking. For overnight parking, you can get a permit for that. But you can't get a permit for the Borough parking lot back here, which is the public parking. So, as I say, I'm trying to be respectful of people on the street because it's very limited parking. And on the 100 block, a lot of people have 2 cars or 2 vehicles. So, I have a car and a truck. I do park one of the cars in my driveway. I'm one of the few houses that have a driveway. But my vehicle is parked on the street in front of my house, which I did get a permit for the street here with a 100 block, I did. But, I'm not sure, sometimes I think there's not that much snow, and I come up the next morning and I get a ticket.
All right, so I'll let the chief address the current rules.
As far as the notification, it occurs through Everbridge, so if you go to the Borough website and sign up, there's a link there called Stay Informed, and you can sign up for an alert. It's also posted on the Borough webpage, sent out to the newsletter email distribution list, and it's on social media, Facebook, Instagram, things of that nature. As far as when it's declared, tonight's a perfect example. We don't want to inconvenience people if it's unnecessary. Technically, by the signage, it says 1 hour after the start of snowfall.
Right.
So we don't enforce it to that letter just for the sheer fact of we don't want to inconvenience people if we don't need to. So what we try to do, last weekend's storm was a perfect example. At 12 o'clock the day before, we sent out a notice saying at 8 p.m. we're declaring a snow emergency to give people 8 hours to be able to move their vehicles and hopefully, find spaces to park.
Okay.
So that's what the attempt is.
Okay.
Now, if there is, we are relying on the meteorologist, so if there is some last minute freak storm, there still is an expectation.
Tonight's a perfect example.
Exactly,
So, if you go on the Borough webpage, there's a place, it says, give us your email. If you haven't already done so, you should do that, and it still does that, right? And you'll be placed on the list, the email list, and you'll get, that's one way to get your name on the list to get notices.
Okay.
Give them your email, and then you won't have to rely on other sources by you going to the website or you going to social media.
Right.
It will come to you, but you have to keep an eye on your emails.
That's it.
Okay.
Well, you can also
said it done.
you can sign up for text messages, phone calls, like a
Oh,
machine will
okay.
call you and tell you.
Text message.
Yeah, or you'll get a phone call and you answer it, and it's like a robot telling you,
Okay.
Albert Borough declared snow emergency.
All right. Is there any plans to have, to get permits, like, for your vehicle in the back parking lot here, like they do on Sabine?
I'll defer to council.
Well, I think Sabine historically has had fewer cars in it, so we thought it was less of an issue if people stayed in there for the long term. This parking lot does get full up, so,
Right.
not so much in the winter, but
Well, if there was an emergency for firefighters.
Yeah, I mean, this parking lot in general gets full, and, you know, our problem was removing vehicles from it that were staying in there all the time.
Right.
There were a few, like,
Now,
trailers and
case in
whatnot.
point tonight,
Yeah.
with the snow, am I allowed to park in the parking lot because to get off the street?
I don't
I thought
believe
that
you are
was-
officially allowed to.
We didn't
Or
call
is
it
the,
snow
actually, is the
emergency.
borough, is
Is
overnight
it
in the
that
borough
intense?
lot?
No.
Overnight's not
Actually,
permitted in
you
this
can't do
lot,
overnight.
during a snow
No.
emergency would allow it, and again, we're gonna try to be as accommodating as possible. So on a night like tonight, if someone's parked there overnight, as long as it doesn't create a hazard, it won't be a problem.
Right, okay.
But we have not called a snow emergency for tonight.
So I'll just make sure I give you my cell phone for text messages.
Yes, make sure to sign up.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, sir. Let's keep on staying in the room here. Anybody in the second row wish to make a public comment? Okay, Dennis?
Good evening, Dennis Cowan, 27 Arbor Park. I'm here in the capacity of Chair of the Parks and Rec Board, and I just wanted to share with you that we are planning 2 events in 2025. The first being an Arbor Park movie night, tentatively scheduled for Saturday, April 26th at 7:30 p.m. Yeah, it's the same day as the fun run, but we feel that that's a great day to make an experience out of the day, and also last minute promotion at the sign-in desk, a poster for a movie night. So the next one is Save on Park Food Truck Festival, utilizing the parking lot there, and obviously the adjacent park for kids to play during the event. That is tentatively scheduled for Saturday, September 20th from 4 to 8. I confirmed with borough staff that those days there's no other events scheduled, so it's penciled in the calendar, and we will have a formal plan ready for you guys to review and approve on the February meeting. Prior to that, I'll go over the draft with borough staff, and that's it. I just wanted to put it on your radar.
All right, that sounds exciting, and
Will you have birthday cake for the mayor on September 20th?
It was supposed to be surprised.
all right,
That's it.
thank you.
All right.
Let's move online. If anybody online would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand, and Ms. Dobbs will, I can't really see from here.
Yes, we have Carol Marie Scanlon.
All right, Carol Maurice, if you want to unmute and make your comment.
Greg, could you please repeat your president's comment? You cut out during the middle of it. There was static.
Do you have a comment in general to make, or do you want?
Well, I do, but my comment may affect or may be affected by what you just said. You said something about Save My Park or Save My Property, but you cut out.
Okay, I will repeat. We had an email request on behalf of somebody who owns a private school that they were interested in walking through the property, potentially acquiring the property. That would be a change from what council had in mind for the property, so we are going to discuss this request in executive session after the meeting. We have had no other communications. We have not responded to the request, and I don't currently have the name of the person who owns the school, just an agent reached out to us. So.
Okay, so do they want to buy the whole property?
Can you make your comments, and then I will respond.
All right, my comment is, what are the results of the survey that was done at 201 in December? And has there been an appraisal or an assessment done on the property? And is there an RFP? I mean, I can go on, you can answer, it's probably easiest to answer as I ask.
Keep asking, and then once you finish,
All right.
I will answer.
So you asked the staff to work on a plan for subdividing the property? Is that still in the cards?
All set?
Okay, and then on a different subject, on the calendar or on the agenda, you're talking about a proposed pay for council. while we all realize you put a lot of time in on the council, it's a volunteer position. And I would think that the taxpayers would be the ones to vote whether council would have a pay or an honorarium rather than council voting on a pay for themselves. Kind of like Congress is they do that all the time, and it's frustrating because they raise their pay. With you're worried about the tax dollars, keeping a park would have to raise taxes. What is this, are the taxpayers going to vote if you all get a pay or an honorarium?
All right, so I will say that we have no news on the appraisals or we're still in the process of getting appraisals done on at 201 Sabine. There's no news there. Those have not been completed. There's been no RFP. So we're still in progress with our prior plans to get information about the value of 201 Sabine. And as for the potential for council being paid, much like any other, much like Congress, it is not voted on by taxpayers, it is voted on by council. I can understand your interest, but that is, that's entirely at council's discretion, much like Congress's pay is for Congress. And I think that's the way it's set up, just about any legislative body. And we will discuss some of those affairs later on when we hit the agenda item. But I do understand.
So are you saying that there's been no appraisal done at the property, or it's being done and not completed yet?
There's no appraisal. The surveys are still being completed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carol Marie. Anybody else who's online wish to make a public comment?
I don't see any more hands.
Okay, I'm going to close public comment then. Let's move on to the consent agenda.
I move that Borough Council approve the consent agenda items A through F.
I will second.
Okay, any discussion of the consent agenda? All right, we are going to be voting on consent agenda items A through F. All those in favor? Ira, you want to come on video? Okay, great. It is unanimous. All right, to consideration items.
I move that council approve resolution number 2025-01 commending Jim Cornwell. And I'll read the resolution.
Let's get a second first.
I'll second.
Okay, now go ahead and read the resolution for us.
Whereas Jim Cornwell, AIA, was born in Hartford, Connecticut, spent his childhood in Farmington, Connecticut, and eventually found his way home to Narberth, Pennsylvania. And whereas Jim has served with distinction on multiple Narberth boards and commissions, including the Planning Commission, the Historic Architectural Review Board, and the UCC Appeals Board, and was the founder and president of a local Narberth architectural firm, Metro Architects. And whereas Jim has now offered his resignation from the Narberth Planning Commission after a significant and accomplished term of office spanning 18 years, including 11 years in which he served as chair. And whereas during that time, Jim has been a tireless advocate both for Narberth's history and for its future, helping develop Narberth's form-based zoning code and its historic preservation ordinance, reviewing major projects such as the Elm, Price Crossing, Narberth Square, and the preservation and conversion of the St. Margaret's Gleason Center and the Methodist Church, among many other projects, and pushing for the creation of a true town square in downtown Narberth. And whereas even prior to his service on the Narberth Planning Commission, Jim participated in the effort to preserve the Dr. Snyder House in the late 1980s, commonly considered the birth of the preservation movement in Narberth, and thereafter he organized locally to build support for and demonstrate the importance of adaptive reuse policies that can allow Narberth to manage its growth while preserving its historic resources. And whereas Jim has approached his service with a deep appreciation for, in his own words, Narberth's, quote, funkiness, and has approached his role as a self-described keeper of the funky with care, professionalism, and a quick wit. And whereas Jim has now decided to retire from the Narberth Planning Commission, writing that, quote, "It has been my great privilege to serve on the Borough's Planning Commission since 2006, end quote. And whereas Borough Council wishes it to be known that it has, in fact, been the Borough's great privilege to have the benefit of Jim's expertise, energy, and commitment to the Narberth community, now therefore be it resolved that the Borough Council and Mayor for the Borough of Narberth hereby recognize Jim Cornwell for his leadership in the Narberth community and for the significant contributions he has made to planning and land use in the borough, and offer their deep gratitude and appreciation for his years of service."
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been, in the whole, in the main, it has been a great experience. Capstone of my career as an architect and planner. And I'm proud to have participated in this way. And I think I look forward to a few other tasks ahead. We all know what those are. So thanks a lot.
I want to play He Got the Funk in honor of you.
The funkiness is a very now malleable and ill-defined. But you know, we got it.
You know what, I'm going to play it for you at the Greeks one day.
And we want to keep it. That's sort of the heart of the driver of the form-based code, I think. So let's all collaborate to keep Narberth
The funk.
funky.
We'll get a picture. I think we should do it.
All right.
Yeah, run the mat, that's perfect.
Fred, do you want in on this?
Oh,
Pass it? Michael, anyone else? Anyone on pass it?
Yeah, I'll join.
Yeah, Michael needs to be on there,
Yeah.
absolutely. Jim, you were for our commissioner.
I don't know.
Don't you think Todd would Ralph, yeah, Todd, come on. Ralph's on the commission. And Kate should get a special shout out for the hour.
Get there, Kate.
I can cheer this crowd on.
Wow.
Yeah, you're fine.
Gotta do the wedding thing, you gotta turn towards Jim.
Great,
Yeah.
but, okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry, we're going to Kate this time.
What, no Pete?
I'll buy you a drink.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments, or shall we vote? Let's vote on Resolution 2025-01, commending Jim Cornwell. All those in favor? All right. It's unanimous.
Yeah.
Yep, Ira's got it. We got you, Ira. All right. Thanks again. 10B.
I move that Borough Council adopt Resolution 2025-02, Boards and Commissions Appointments.
Second.
Okay, so thank once again everybody who stepped forward and serving on our volunteer boards and commissions. Maggie got to meet everybody, so realizing how many volunteer boards and commissions we have, I'm sure is
I still have a few more.
All right.
Almost there.
So I think primarily we are reappointing people who are already on boards and commissions. We have one new appointment, is that right? Or
Yes, so I can provide a brief overview and then
Sure.
also an explanation. So I did color code it a little bit to make it easier. So anything that is in yellow is going to represent somebody who is an existing member of that board or commission whose term expired at the end of December and who has requested reappointment to maintain their current position. Within the Planning Commission, because Mr. Cornwell has stepped down, we did appoint the alternate into the remainder of his position, so that's Brian Kinslow. And then we did receive a new application from David Greenberg to fill the alternate position. So that is highlighted in yellow because that is a new appointment, like a fresh appointment, and then a reappointment of sorts for the alternate to move into the main position. Otherwise, everything that is in green represents a vacancy. This is either a pre-existing vacancy or a vacancy created by somebody who is resigning or otherwise not seeking reappointment. So we did have a few people who resigned. So we had a resignation from Parks and Rec, a resignation from Planning Commission, and a resignation from the Industrial Authority. And then we had 2 people not seeking reappointment, one from Civil Service and one from the Human Relations Commission. So those then have become vacancies. We do not yet have an application in for those vacancies. So those are newly created vacancies. And finally, I will point out the only other thing that we need to be mindful of, which I know the Planning Commission is already aware of, and something that we've discussed, is on the HARB. We do have a requirement that there is a Planning Commission member on the HARB. With Jim's resignation, we do not have that Planning Commission member at this time. The HARB is fully staffed by volunteers, so we will need to work with Planning Commission to see if we can get somebody to step up into that position to ensure that we meet the minimum mix requirements of that membership.
Okay, and I do see that the HARB, recognizing this, looks like Jen Hyun is not going to be reappointed to the HARB. That was I have an email communication that she is going to not be reappointed to keep a slot open for the eventual Planning Commission members.
Okay, very good. So what we can do then is I can amend this to remove her then as that member, and then that will be a vacancy that we will then reappoint. Or not reappoint, I'm sorry, that we will then
appoint
somebody else into that position.
Do you want to thank Jen, who's I think been on the HARB, she on the HARB since it started? Yeah, and on Planning Commission for a while, so, but has moved out of the borough. So.
Also, I realized I didn't have the motion sheet in front of me, and it's not just, there's additional things. So can I amend my motion to also affirm the appointment of the professional consultants in their service roles to the Borough and to appoint other offices of the Borough as indicated on the resolution sheet?
Okay, and you want to amend it to not include the appointment of...
And to not include the appointment of Jen Hayon to HARB, for the reasons stated.
All right, any objection to that amended motion? Okay. All right, any other discussion about the appointments to the various boards and commissions? All right, let us vote on the amended motion, which is the appointments to the boards and commissions, as well as appointments to, what's the term for that? Sorry? As well as appointments to...
Yeah, I
I don't have it.
Just navigate it away from there.
As
well as to affirm the appointment of the professional consultants in their service roles to the Borough and to appoint other offices of the Borough as indicated on the resolution sheet and as modified, to not including Jen Hayon.
It's clear in the packet. These are basically the important contractors and the experts that we rely on, technical experts that we rely on for various aspects of borough business. Okay, so we're voting. All those in favor? Okay, it is unanimous. Thanks, everybody. And I am just, since I've got this open, I am just going to mention the vacancies that we still have. The vacancy in the Civil Service Commission.
Technically, can we say 2 because
2 vacancies.
I've been trying to get off for a while now.
A vacancy for the Environmental Advisory Council. 3 vacancies in the Human Relations Commission, as well as a vacancy for an alternate. A vacancy in the Industrial Development Authority. Vacancy in the Parks and Recreation Board. one in the Police Advisory Committee, and one for an alternate in the UCC Appeals Board, should it ever meet. Okay, those are our current vacancies.
Can I mention the Human Relations Commission is a committee that's likely to contract?
Okay.
So,
There may only be.
I mean, just realistically in the next few months, I think.
Okay, so there may not be any vacancies. Shrink it down to 3, you're recommending?
Yeah, we will be likely recommending that we shrink it to 3.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to our next consideration item.
I move that Borough Council adopt Resolution 2025-03 to approve the preliminary final subdivision and land development plan for 202 Dudley Avenue for the subdivision of an existing lot into 2 lots for the future construction of a new single-family house and detached garage, subject to all conditions as outlined in the resolution and subject to the approval of all requested waivers.
Someone like to? Okay. All right. So we've got Mr. Yan on the call virtually. So
I see Mr. Yan, the architect, is on, as is Vince Posado, who is the principal for the applicant. This is a project at 202 Dudley Avenue that proposes to subdivide that property, keep the remaining structure, the house at 202, and then construct a new single-family dwelling unit, I believe 3-storied, with a detached garage, driveway, and associated site improvements on that newly subdivided lot. The plan was reviewed by both the Narberth Planning Commission and Montgomery County Planning Commission and was approved subject to certain conditions and recommendations. There was an issue related to the need to obtain special exception approval for the driveway. That was granted, I believe, last night by the zoning hearing board, so that also has been done. There were some discussions that came up earlier today related to the fact that the property has not been reviewed, or the plan, the project has not been reviewed by the Narberth Shade Tree Commission or reviewed by the borough's landscape architect. It's my understanding that there may be a desire to have that happen. As a result, that's something that the council does want to proceed with approving this plan tonight. I would make a recommendation that the resolution and the conditions of approval be amended, and therefore the motion be amended to add a condition that prior to recording the plan, the applicant shall submit the plan to the borough landscape architect for review and comply with the recommendations of the borough landscape architect to the satisfaction of the borough. In addition, the applicant shall submit the plan to and meet with the Narberth Shade Tree Commission and comply with the recommendations of the Shade Tree Commission to the satisfaction of the borough. Any changes to the landscaping only, on the plan as a result of those recommendations shall be permitted to be administratively approved by the borough prior to the plan recording. So that would ensure a review and that they would comply with the requirements. It'd probably be useful for tonight for anyone on council that has landscaping concerns or feedback to provide them to Mr. Yan so people can get on the same page. Other than that, it's a pretty standard approval condition, a project that's often seen here in Narberth Borough. They are preserving the existing house that's there. There are 2 waivers requested. One is the preliminary final plan being treated at the same time, and the other is a minimum driveway pavement width of 10 feet, which would be a waiver. I believe they're going to be seeking 9 feet. So just 1 foot, which I don't believe the Planning Commission had an issue with based upon Mr. Guadini. I think you provided feedback on that to us.
Yeah, I circulated information that was forwarded to me by the Planning Commission.
And if there's any questions about the project itself, I would turn it over to Mr. Yan.
All right.
Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions. I don't have anything else to add. Thanks, Mr. Walko.
Okay.
Mr. Yan, would your, and I guess Mr. Posado, would you be amenable to that additional condition as I read it tonight, to be added to a condition of approval?
Yes, that's fine. Vince and I talked about that earlier today.
And just to highlight some of the concerns that I had, one was the street tree. The plan proposes removal of the street tree and then planting a new street tree a couple feet away from where the current one is. And I understand that you spoke to Planning Commission about this and you agreed with Planning Commission, well, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. So that was one of my concerns, and I don't know if that had been addressed already before today.
We did agree to keep the tree on the new lot in front of the new home, and I have revised the plans to show that, but they have not been submitted yet. Typically, we don't resubmit in between the Planning Commission and Borough Council, so
Okay.
we'll submit after this meeting tonight.
So the other thing I noted was the use of arborvitae as replacement tree. Arborvitae is not on the borough's list of recommended trees or recommended, I don't know if it's, I don't personally consider it a tree. I don't know what what the official stance of the borough is on that, but so reconsider perhaps the use of arborvitae. And I would wonder, the driveway runs right next to a tree on the neighboring lot. It seems to be so close that if it were a tree on your lot, it wouldn't be allowed. But since it's on a neighboring lot, possibly it is. Like, you're not allowed to be within 5 feet of a tree that you're going to keep, I believe. And this runs like under the foliage, I think, of this relatively small tree. So I'm not sure that there's a way to work with that based on the current layout of the site or layout of the design, but I note that that's a little, not sure the tree is going to survive the experience. Especially if it's a driveway that's slightly narrower than usual.
We can discuss that with the Shade Tree Commission. I'm not aware of a requirement to stay 5 feet away. I know we do typically, if we have disturbance within a drip line of a tree, we mark it as impacted. It's one of those where we try to keep it, but sometimes the borough engineer will require us to escrow money in case it doesn't survive, and then we need replacement trees. We could talk about that. I don't know if, I might be able to shift the driveway a foot or so to jog it a little bit at the end, but it's a 7-inch tree, so it's not a large tree. And I think it looks like we're around that 5 foot mark. Even 4 feet, I think, would still be okay on one side, but we can discuss that with the Shade Tree Commission.
All right.
So, a couple of things. First, can I amend my motion to incorporate the conditions as outlined by the solicitor?
Yes. And it sounds like anyone have an objection to those conditions being added? Okay, it sounds like they have agreed to those conditions. So,
And then
good.
I just wanted to also just run through, because I think the recommendations by the Planning Commission have mostly been satisfied, is my understanding, so I just wanted to run through those real quick. It was addressing items outlined by the engineer and the zoning officer, which is a condition of the resolution.
Yes.
Obtaining the special exception, which has occurred.
Yes. And comply with any, and I'm not sure if there's any conditions of approval, but.
Yeah. The question about stormwater runoff, in my understanding, and it was, I think, about point discharge versus distributed. In my understanding, and I just confirmed this on the record, my understanding is that that's also being incorporated into the plan set as well.
I would defer to Mr. Young on that.
Yes, it was. We talked about the Planning Commission, and basically the revision we're making is we created a 15-foot wide stone infiltration trench / spreader behind the garage, and so that swale will go into that spreader where it will spread out. Instead of being, a swale that discharges in within a few feet, it will spread out over 15 feet, plus putting the stone and fabric in there will give it a chance to infiltrate first, so that for the smaller storms there shouldn't be any runoff from the swale. But that's another one where we made the revision. It has not been reviewed by the borough engineer yet.
Yeah, but it will be.
Correct.
And then the side, it's called a sidewalk, but it's just the walkway to the building to the structure that's already been addressed. But my understanding was I think there was questions about like root zone, and my understanding that that'll be taken into account in terms of having like laid stone or something that's not necessarily destroying the root zone is also my understanding.
Right, instead of a concrete walkway that would have 4 inches of stone base and 4 inches of concrete, instead we're proposing like a dry laid flagstone that goes through the under the tree drip line, so that there's not as much impact to the roots.
Okay.
And just, I don't know if it's the appropriate time to say it or not, but this was a discussion at the Planning Commission. The walkway is a requirement of the zoning code. And so we're forced to put the walkway there. If that wasn't a requirement, we could have simply turned the walkway right when it came down to the bottom of the steps and turned it 90 degrees to go over to the driveway so that there would be less impact. But we're required to have a walkway, and so that's why we can change it to the stepping stones, but we can't remove it completely.
Yeah, I think the walkway makes good sense. As someone who wants to create a walkway where it currently feeds into a driveway, I do like the walkways. And then there was I think the only other recommendation I had seen, and I believe this was accomplished as well, was the recommendation from the Montgomery County Planning Commission, because they had noted that in terms of like our future land use map, this area, single family detached, is not the thing that our comprehensive plan would normally call for in this zone. Nevertheless, the zoning code allows it. And so there was a recommendation from the Montgomery County Planning Commission to just run the theoretical exercise of if it were converted by a future homeowners who say wanted to add like a basement ADU or something along those lines, how would that be accomplished? My understanding is that y'all have kind of run that exercise as well and accomplished that recommendation from the Montgomery County Planning Commission.
We have the architect prepared a sketch that shows, how he would envision the building being broken up into 2 parts. It would be the basement and first floor would be one, and second floor and third floor would be another. We talked about, should we move an egress door? Should we move utilities, things like that? And, we have this sketch that we'll submit with the next submission showing how that could be accomplished.
Right, and not that that's something that y'all are proposing, but just to accomplish the thought exercise as recommended by the Montgomery County Planning Commission.
Yes.
And then there were, just flagging for council, there were other recommendations of the Narberth Planning Commission in terms of things to look at for future code review processes, cleanups and things like that. So that's on us rather than that.
So while we have our planning commission representatives and our Montgomery County in the room, I did note that the idea that this is just outside of our downtown district, we should be encouraging kind of higher density uses here. I mean, is there something, obviously, what we're being told by developers is that the demand that's there is for single family houses. Like there's nothing, they could have presented us by right with a duplex here. Like this could have been the same footprint, just a duplex. I mean, probably the driveway would have been different or whatever, but there's nothing major, I don't think, stopping them from doing that. And yet, obviously, the single family is preferred. So is there something you think we should be looking at, or what would be your approach to encouraging people to build what kind of the borough thinks should go down there rather than very large detached single family houses?
Everyone just turned and looked at each other.
Well, hey, they put it in their recommendation. they started this. So
it was discussed in the planning commission overview of that property, and Mr. Yon looked at that as well, and it didn't seem feasible to fit a duplex on the width of that property, considering the driveway as well. The question of whether or not a shared driveway could have been an option was brought up, which may have created a little bit more space with a shared driveway, but that, again, also was not preferred from a sales perspective.
but also would have required entire rework of the plan. And they were at that point where I didn't think that they thought it was really feasible to pull off the duplex on the size of that property. So
Yeah, I don't want to panic Mr. Yon here. I'm talking about for future developments, not for this one in particular.
Yeah.
And I do want to note as well on that, my understanding as well, so because our zoning code is regulated according to the form of buildings, and we don't currently have, like our twin structure, basically you're having to subdivide side by side. And for small projects like this especially, normally folks aren't wanting to set up an entire condo regime for 2 units, which is functionally what you would have to do. But there are other forms of housing that actually could accomplish a fee simple sale, like Muse homes that I know have been discussed by the Narberth Planning Commission before, that actually go back from the street. And it allows you to accomplish that within different configurations of land. So some of those things, you might have the theoretical ability to do a duplex, but if it's the question for someone of establishing a 2-person condo regime, they probably won't do that. But if there are other options in terms of just a fee simple sale, it might encourage them more to meet those goals.
Mr. Blaney, there is another option for condos. It's just 2 units. It's just to enter into agreements, which I've done in other municipalities as well, when it's simple, whether we're talking about stormwater or a driveway. We're not talking about a significant amount of open space to maintain.
Well, they would have to be on one lot,
facilities.
so they'd be a shared lot.
And then that would be accompanied by the agreement related to the 2 units on the lot.
Right.
We've rented the property, so.
Yeah.
But you're right, there are additional considerations.
Yeah.
So another suggestion would be to loosen the definition of a lot in certain circumstances. So the lot doesn't have to physically front a street, but that a lot has access to a street via
Exactly.
easement. So in the case of this property, they could have stacked one lot in front of the other, so that you would have a fee simple ownership. I would say our rules are kind of 90% of the way there. What we really run into is things like the real estate market, the insurance market, things like that, that are other considerations that we can't really, we can't even use property tax advantages or things like that in other states people can use. So I kind of feel like in terms of zoning, we do have a lot of tools in there. It's these kind of external things that we can't control that sort of drive solutions. But as you know, Mr. President, you've asked us to look at that as a priority this year. We are working with council members on that.
Okay. All right, going back to project at hand here. Any other questions or comments?
Just a quick comment, sidebar, Michael, I appreciate you constantly putting this on our radar, because when people say, my kids want to come back here and they can't afford to buy a house, these are the moments that we need to point to say, no, a new person or family is not going to buy a $1.5 million single-story house. They're not going to rent a $4,000 apartment, and we need to be strategic so folks can come in here. So I appreciate you telling us we need to continue to work together to break down these barriers, and I know that's on your agenda.
All right. Okay, so we are going to be voting on 3 separate issues, right? We have to vote on the plan itself and the 2 waivers.
You can vote all at the same time if you
Okay.
want to approve it with the waivers as stated,
Okay.
as amended.
All right, does anybody have any concerns with the 9-foot driveway versus a 10-foot driveway? All right, does anybody have any concerns about waiving the final plan? So this would be a preliminary and final submission.
And that's subject
Contingent.
to, contingent on
The
meeting
contingencies.
with
Yeah.
Shade Tree.
Yeah, and then this would all be contingent on meeting with Shade Tree and submitting to our landscape architect.
Yeah, and fulfilling comments.
Fulfilling comments. Okay. All right, and that's agreeable to you, Mr. Young? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right, in that case, let us vote on the approval of the plan and the approval of the 2 waivers. All those in favor of the approval and the waivers? Any opposed? Are you opposed?
No.
No, you're in favor? Okay, it is unanimous. Thank you. Wow, I was going to be surprised. All right. Thank you, Mr. Young and Mr. Sposato. All right, let's move on to 10D. It's Barbicane Thornton.
I move the Borough Council adopt a contract presented by Barbicane Thornton and Company for the provision of professional CPA services to the borough.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Dobbs, you want to lay this one out for us?
Sorry,
It's okay. Well, I'll
we're discussing the amendment to the resolution.
okay, well, I can do it if you want. I mean, this is a, we've agreed in the past to have professional accounting services available just to support the office, to be available for, limited amount of hours a month. We've budgeted for this already. We budgeted for it last year, and I think we used the same firm, Barbicane Thornton, last year.
Yes, so we have been using this particular firm for, I believe he said almost 8 years. I could be misquoting, but this firm has been with us, they know the process. So this was budgeted for, so there's an allowance of $18,240 for accounting support services that was approved as part of the 2025 budget. The contract is for up to 4 hours per month. And again, this is the up to 4 hours, we will just be billed for the services rendered. So the intent is to have the accountant come and provide additional services to aid in the transition from former manager West to myself, and provide the necessary checks and balances and reviews and education and oversight to make sure that everything is looking spick and span with all of our financial transactions.
Okay. Any questions? All right, let's vote to approve the contract with Barbicane Thornton for CPA services. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, 10E.
I would like to move that Borough Council adopt the contract presented by Revise to develop and host a new website for the borough.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Councilmember Rickards, and
yes, President Bush, we have Kelsey Fisher on the line here, so she is our records clerk, and she was the one who was instrumental in seeking out and identifying the potential services for this, so I will turn it over to Kelsey.
Thank you, Maggie. So when I started at the Borough in August, Matt West asked me to look into a new website provider as ours is outdated, both in design and functionality. I spent a portion of my first few months researching and evaluating different website designers and attending online demos, and found Revise to be a perfect fit for us. So on December 19th, as you guys probably remember, I presented our options at the F&A meeting, and we agreed to move forward with Revise as our new web provider. So as a reminder, some of the reasons we have chosen Revise include the fact that they do not use open source software, making them less prone to hackers. They create thoughtful designs that are easy to navigate without the use of pre-made templates, meaning everything is custom made specifically for us. And one of the best reasons is that we receive a free web design during year 4 of our contract. Overall, we get the most for our money with Revise compared to their competitors. So I would love to introduce you all to Danny Calloway, who is also here on Zoom with us. Danny is the account executive for Revise and has been my point of contact since I reached out to them back in September. So you'll notice his name on our sales agreement and our proposal from Revise. And Danny should be able to answer any of your questions about the sales agreement, as well as any questions you may have about Revise in general.
Thank you, Kelsey.
thanks, Kelsey. Council members have questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, first of all, Kelsey, thank you for taking the lead of this. We've been talking about this for 7 years that I've been on council, and we've never, like, it's so close I can touch it. I think Ron Swanson would love our webpage. Ron Swanson, the libertarian from Parks and Rec, because it is truly the most bureaucratic webpage ever. I mean, aside from it, I find it very difficult to navigate, but I think it absolutely misrepresents our community. So someone looking at Narberth, I would keep driving. So Danny, I guess my question is, aside from all the important things that Kelsey has researched with hacking and vulnerability and access, can you make it look charming and homey? And I mean, there's lots of other examples that we've looked at that boroughs do this, that really invite people to want to know more about our town and understand the supports.
Absolutely. The goal with all of our sites is we want to give potential residents, current residents, a feel of what it's like to actually live there and an accurate representation of the community. Ease of navigation is paramount with all of our sites. You can have a great looking website, but if you can't find content, it's not really going to do you any good and it's going to frustrate the residents. So in terms of delivering a site, at the end of the day, we work with you to make sure that we do not hand off and sign off on the site until you say, love it, looks great, and we're on our way.
And Cindy, you may not know that Kelsey and I actually met prior to, because I've sort of been taking the lead on communication plan in general, which this is part of. And we actually looked at a couple of sites hosted. So we saw the look and feel and really liked them.
Yeah.
You know, as you said,
Nice.
I mean, even just the graphics, you know, it's like just having a welcoming graphic on your landing page, you know, creates a welcoming environment, and we saw that. You know, so
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for this.
And Danny, you work entirely on municipal sites or mostly on municipal sites? I know the company has a focus on.
Yeah, no, Revise, we've been around for a little over 25 years. We have 3,300 clients nationwide, but it is 100% municipality. So borough, city, state, county, township, everything in between, but that's our wheelhouse. That's all we work with.
And there will be a part of the site dedicated to the police department, yes?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Good.
Especially with saving the day at the train station.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And in terms of the platform that you use, is it easy for the office staff to make updates as well?
Yes, that's one of I think one of the biggest selling points with our solution is ease of use when it comes to editing the website. Regardless of if you have little to no experience, anyone can go in and update and easily make changes to it. So that makes everyone's life easier on your end. So if you do need to kind of plug and play with like, I need you to update your page, people can easily go in and do that, and they don't need a whole training session to figure out how to do it.
That's great. Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you.
I don't know if you caught what Kelsey
And if you
said.
guys need an example of a great revised site, my favorite is victoriamn.gov if you want to check it out for Victoria, Minnesota. Their website is gorgeous. I look at it all the time. That is my personal inspiration for our borough. Hopefully we can figure something out like theirs. But if you want to check that out at any point, victoriamn.gov. It's my personal favorite.
This is
It's
a good
gorgeous.
example of get good people and get out of their way for council. You know?
I was starting to say, I don't know if you caught, one of the things that they provide is in year 4, we basically get a total
rehab.
redo if we want it. That's part of the contract.
It's amazing. Yeah. That's awesome.
I never thought I would think that a government website was beautiful, but oh my gosh.
This looks like a travel webpage.
Yeah, this was what I was talking about where, you know, the landing page just looks like, we should have a picture like that on our landing page, right?
Yes.
And I mentioned this at the last meeting, but my previous municipality where I just came from uses Revise as the web provider, and I can attest to the ease of manipulation and modification and customization. So I found it easy to pop things on. We revised permits or added information, and it was very easy to just use the user interface to make those updates.
Yeah. This is amazing, this Victoria. We should have a virtual ribbon cutting if we can actually pull this off.
All right, so what would the timeline be for setting?
Average turnaround time is 20-25 weeks on average. A lot of that is driven by the user side, because if it takes longer to kind of respond to the design team in terms of like, we need input on something, kind of takes that time frame. I've seen turnaround with some sites a month, but that really is just kind of staying on top of it, because our design team works. As long as they have work, they continue to work, and on average we have about 10 different designers per project.
Okay.
Fred, I did have one question. Is that okay?
Go ahead, Ira.
Yep.
Would it replace the current calendar that we use to keep the borough calendar, or would it integrate with our current calendar?
With the calendar feature, I'm trying to remember, Kelsey, if we addressed this specifically or not. We do offer our own calendar that could replace it. If you want to continue to use the one you have, you can do that as well. And we can just integrate it through an iframe or a separate window.
Yeah, I don't think that we previously discussed the calendar specifically, but I'm sure we can figure it out.
Yeah, it's an either or situation. If it's we love our calendar or we're accustomed to using that, great, we can integrate it into the new site. If not, obviously we have our own calendar functionality within the software as well.
Is your calendar subscribable, like for people who want to subscribe to their phones or their home calendars?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
Our current calendar is not so friendly.
I'm just trying to think of logistics. So basically, it's just going to be one day. It'll just flip. You'll have the new one ready to go, and we'll unveil it. I mean, we can't really do it in pieces. So it's all going to be in one fell swoop.
Use my measure scissors.
What's the transition? Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, so essentially we're going to migrate all the existing content in terms of documents, images, things like that to the new site. When we're at that point where, okay, we're ready to go, sign off on the site, everything looks great, we would just redirect the domain name, point the DNS to the new site, and the other one would drop off.
Any other questions?
Just
All right.
one last one, actually. I'm assuming there's like an internal review process before that website goes live.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. We have a different department on our end for site map and making sure that there's no bugs or anything prior to going live. But in terms of your engagement, your input is paramount, and we want to make sure that we deliver a site you want and not one that we say, hey, we think this looks great, here you go. So yes, your input start to finish is going to be part of it.
Great.
Sorry, Fred, I did have one additional question.
All right.
One of the things that's frustrating about the current site is that I think a lot of the documents are links into our SharePoint site. And when you copy the URL, it's just like 10 screen, really long message. Is that, do you integrate with SharePoint in that same way?
We can integrate with SharePoint. We have a specific application within our software, our document center, where it's kind of a centralized hub for you to put all the documents so they're in one location. They're easily accessible, but you can also search directly through that. The goal with everything we build is ease of navigation. So even with documents, agendas, minutes, meetings, whatever it might be, we want to make sure that process is simplified. So whichever works better in terms of we're going to continue to use SharePoint because that's what you guys want to do, great. If not, we'll integrate the documents right through the site.
Yeah, I just tell you that one of the comments we get from the public all the time is like, okay, like where is that document? And then, someone invariably, emails them this like 600 character URL that, points to the document. And
yeah, no, that's not going to be the case. And in terms of everything within the site, including like the document center, it's searchable just like Google or any other search directory, so people can just type in keywords that relate to a document they're looking for, and it'll give them access to it.
We've been wishing for that.
All right. So let's vote here and then maybe talk a little about how we're going to handle this on our end between now and
Yeah, and I
launch.
think, Red, once we finalize the contract here and sign that, Kelsey and I and Danny can sit down and talk about more of the logistics and pan out our time and get a little bit more structure to how we're gonna execute on this, and make sure that you're looped in throughout the process, because once we have something more up and working, Danny, what I'm hearing from you is that you'll share that with us so we can share it internally with staff and council to kind of play around with it, find any bugs, make any comments about usage or design or structure or anything to that effect, and provide that feedback for some revisions. So we'll come up with a game plan for you and make sure to share that once we sit down and figure that out with Danny.
Okay, well, let's vote at this point, I think. Any other comments for Danny? Okay, so let's vote on approving the contract with Revise for website services. All those in favor? Okay, it is unanimous. I guess the question is, is council comfortable with letting staff handle this? We want to have one council member in there, let it all be staff?
I think staff should bring something to FNA, but I don't know that we all need to micromanage it.
No, we definitely don't. I'm thinking maybe one person,
Yeah.
or it can be.
It's
I
me.
think Mike should be
I
that
mean, I
person.
already started. If it's going to be anybody, it should probably be me because I've sort of took the lead on the communication plan, and if we want to make sure that this fits in with the rest of the communication plan
Great,
as an integrated whole, it's logically me.
you're hired.
Does that sound good?
Is that okay with you? Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
great,
just
thank
keep Mike in the loop, and then can report back to council as appropriate. And I'm sure that once we get closer to launch, we'll all want to take a look at it. We'll all have some opinions. But for a while, all right, thanks. Thank you, Kelsey. Nice to meet you, Danny.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Thanks, Kelsey.
All right, let's move on to 10F. Oh, yes, we did.
Yeah.
We voted,
Yeah.
it was unanimous. Just before I went into the discussion of should council be involved.
Okay.
We took our vote.
Okay, great.
Can I do this one? I move that Borough Council adopt the contract presented by ET&T for renewal of services as the borough's telecommunication provider.
Okay,
I will second.
seconded, all right. Maggie, you want
All
to
right.
tell us about AT&T?
Yes, so ET&T is our telecommunications provider. We've been with them since 2021. So they provide all of the actual physical hardware, as well as all of the technical service. So they manage our phones, our voicemail, integrate voicemail to email, and manage all of that. So from what I hear from rest of staff is that our service has been really well received with them. They're very responsive. They have, as a matter of policy, a 15-minute response rate to any outreach to them with any technical issues. They helped me set up my voicemail when I started. It was very seamless. So the contract renews automatically. unless we provide them with a request for termination. So that contract is up at the end of the month. We have been satisfied with their services. They did provide a revised cost estimate, so there is a 4% increase for this year. That is in the email that's included in the packet that includes what the current cost is for the year. But everything is well within reason, and they have been a good service provider to us. So I would recommend that we move forward with contract renewal with them.
Okay. Any concerns? Anybody who uses the phone service want to say anything? Okay. Looks like staff is pretty comfortable with the phone service. Okay, let's vote to approve a renewed contract with AT&T for telecommunications services. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Rules and procedures, Borough Council.
Okay, so I think that I'll move that we table the update to the manual rules of procedure of the Narberth Borough Council, last revised December 15th, 2021, for now.
I mean, I would say we should consider discussing it, if not, even if we don't pass it. just
Can we
because
discuss the
everybody's-
motion to table?
I mean, it looks like on the agenda it says a review of rules and procedures.
So we're not voting.
So we're not voting on it, so we don't need a motion, we can just discuss.
It looks like it's just a discussion item.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
weird because there
Motion
was
is
a,
to adopt.
yeah, there's somebody,
An
there is a
update.
motion in the packet, I think is what's confusing.
I mean, to discuss the topic, I think doesn't someone need to move it, that we discuss?
If you were not going to make the motion, you can just table the motion. But the agenda has it as a review of rules and procedures, so even though there is a motion in the packet, you could just ignore it, or if you wanted to formally
We could just commence our discussion,
Yeah,
I think is what we're told. All right, very well. So,
Nice baby.
yeah, well, as Mike said, I think we're not quite ready to vote on it, but everyone's had a look at it, and there's been a lot of feedback, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the changes that I made since the last draft were mostly just kind of updates and clarifications. Got good feedback from a number of folks, including Fred and Ira and the solicitor. And I think one of the big items that the solicitor flagged a couple big things to incorporate. One of the big ones was having it come either simultaneous or in close coordination with the public comment rules, which we're still discussing at FNA. Those had kind of gone off onto a different track, largely for a couple reasons. One of them, we thought they kind of speak to different audiences a little bit. We wanted the public comment rules to be more easily accessible to the public. They kind of live in their own document, because it establishes kind of like expectations, whereas the council rules are just much more about our procedures. And we also thought it was kind of cleaner that if future councils want to, revisit or modify the public comment rules, they just have a kind of more delimited document that they're looking at. But all that to say, since we don't have that complementary document at this time, and the council rules kind of refer to a separate resolution that would be adopting that, that those kind of should come up in closer coordination. The solicitor also mentioned some, I'm going to call them formatting changes, but they're a little bit more than that, which is clearly defining each specific, like the different roles, like the word chair, what does the actual word chair mean, and capitalizing them to specify that there's a specific definition associated with that, so that every time it's used, it's more clearly understood what that actually means. So I think those were the two big ones. There was a lot of additional clarification.
Yeah, I think those were, and the one, really it's the idea of the chair versus president.
Yeah.
And you chair a meeting, technically you're chairing this meeting, but sometimes you also refer to as council president. So essentially, I think you just add language that says, a chair in capital I shall mean the person running the meeting, including the president of council for a council meeting. And then just use the word chair throughout.
And it is possible that the president attends the meeting virtually, for instance, and is not chairing over the meeting. So that's the.
But there weren't any legal issues that I saw when I went went through them. There's nothing that conflicts with these rules and the Borough Code, the Municipalities Planning Code, or Sunshine Act, or anything along those lines. So it's ready to move forward with those changes. Again, with the resolution, I didn't know one was actually being worked upon. I think it is important to have that somewhat in tandem, just because it is a big, important part of how council will treat the public and expectations for the public at any meetings, not just council, but the committees as well.
We want to make it more accessible to the public. That's one of the things. So, we want to take it out of this somewhat dense document, just have it, it's going to be hopefully a 2-page standalone document. Makes it just much easier for the public to see.
I represent a few municipalities who have that resolution related to the public comment actually at the door. So the public can see
Right.
what the rules are.
Yeah, that's the thought, is that you just post it so people know.
Consistent.
Yep. It's going to cross-reference the, in other words, it's not going to say in here in detail what public comment is. It's going to refer you to the public
Yeah,
comment.
no, I get it. I mean, we need to be consistent.
Oh, yeah.
And most of the things in the rules were already in the rules. We've carried forward, it's mostly just kind of restating it in clearer language and breaking it out so that it's in the document. There were some updates that we already discussed at the last council meeting. Don't need to go through them all again, but just.
A lot of it was organization. It seemed like the document was updated at different times, so things were just in the wrong place. It was kind of hard to navigate through the document because there were things 4 pages later that were referring to something that it belonged in the next paragraph. And instead, it was referred many pages later. So Mike Goal,
You can call me either.
Michael really took the laboring oar on this in excruciating detail, and I think it's just a much more readable document than what existed before.
And the big thing we added was the relationship to technology that we use now, the video and
update to the 21st century.
links.
Yeah, I think that's important. I do want to suggest that once we finish up with this, council consider leaving it alone for a while. I think we've updated these rules several times.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's the best use of our time to keep updating these rules. So I think once we get the rules for the digital meetings down, which I think.
Well, that's where we started. That's how it started. And
Yeah.
then when we were looking at it, it was like, oh, well, as long as
I'd
we're
encourage,
here.
future councils not to perhaps consider this settled for a while, because it does take a lot of time and a lot of attention, I know, to go through all the details and all the scenarios. Well, what if this happened? When do we elect the president pro tem here? Yeah. It's, so envisioning unlikely scenarios.
Yeah. So if anyone has any additional unlikely scenarios, you can send them to me ahead of the final.
And you'll ignore them.
Council is hit by a tornado.
Yep.
If it's too loud. Anybody else have comments?
No, thank you for your work on that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, so we're thinking next month we'll have the, I guess when the public comment resolution is.
We actually talked about it at FNA right before
Okay.
this meeting, so we have a draft.
Okay, I'd like to see the draft. We should. Okay. Anybody else have anything to add about the rules of council? John, anything to add? Okay. All right. We're not going to take up any motions at this time, so we'll move on to the EV chargers.
I move that the EV charge rate be increased to a rate as recommended by the EAC pending further evaluation as to the appropriate rate to account for all incurred costs associated with the chargers.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so it's a bit of a complicated motion, but I think the upshot is that the EAC did some initial analysis that we don't think was quite accurate in terms of the borough's final costs. I don't know if it's just the month they were looking at, but didn't ring right to myself and to Maggie. So we still think, we still would like them to, weigh in on the amount, but perhaps with a little more data, a little more time.
Yes, and I did speak with Alan about that, and so he sent over some preliminary information that includes, and Gina, I know you sent an email earlier today, so I apologize I didn't get back in time yet, but we will have that data. So based on the EAC's memo, they were looking at only the last, I believe, 2 months worth of data, which skews a little bit in the colder months and how people use EVs. So we wanted to get a broader scope of the full utilization across all of the EV chargers and take a look at that. So Alan has started pulling together that information, so we will be taking a deeper dive into that holistically and compare 2023 and 2024 data to come up with an actual utilization rate that's more akin to what we're actually expending on usage rates, energy, and then accounting a little bit for some of the administrative time to come up with a more accurate number to cover our costs, because right now our costs are exceeding, or I'm sorry, our revenue is
Not quite enough to cover the costs.
not quite enough to cover the costs. So our costs are exceeding our revenue. So we want to make sure that we're at the very least, on par with those expenditures.
And Maggie, I'm sorry, just to add in that, we'd also suggested including the parking enforcement time, the percentage of time for parking enforcement as a
Yes.
data point.
Yes, right, so the admin time inclusive of the parking
We'll throw
enforcement is
overhead, some percent
a little,
overhead.
yes, a small amount for that overhead, yes, correct.
Are we gonna include tickets as a revenue then, if the
No,
parking
you
enforcement?
legally you can't use
We can't
tickets for
calculate
revenue.
that, it's true, we cannot count them as a,
Yeah, as a revenue source.
No, we're looking strictly at the usage and the utilization and the expenditure of labor to administer the EV chargers themselves. So if there's a problem, it goes down, Jeff calls Flo or Paul or somebody has to reach out. So there is a little bit of that admin time that's involved with it. And then obviously, processing payments, things of that nature. But, and then the actual base rate of the dollar amount, the cents per kilowatt hour that we're charging for actual energy usage itself. So we're gonna factor all of those in with our analysis, looking over the past 2 years.
The rate that they had proposed was exclusively looking at the PICO bills for the last 3 months, but there's expenses outside
Sure,
those that need to be included.
Relatively low.
For a pure revenue neutral, system.
Yeah, the committee, the Public Health and Safety Committee was all in agreement that it should cover all of the costs for maintenance, operations, administrative.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we're really below the area average. We're
We're-
almost 50%.
It's,
Yeah.
I'm charging right now.
Yeah.
all right, that's right, you owe us a beer now. Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, let's vote on modifying the rates for the EV chargers based on the new EAC analysis to come. All those in favor?
Are we gonna have to re-vote those,
Yeah.
since we don't
Yeah,
have
we're
the
gonna
rate,
have
what
to
are we
vote
voting
the
on?
rate.
Well, I think we're voting to authorize Maggie to put it into place once the EAC gives their analysis. It doesn't need to come back to council. Do you not? Well, we'll pause the vote then. There's a question
I
on
thought
what
we were
we're
gonna see
voting
the
on.
final, but maybe I was the only one thinking that we were gonna see it again, that number.
Yeah, that makes more sense to me too.
Yeah, no, I thought we were gonna approve the final number.
Okay.
We're not gonna have a final number today. So.
No,
There's no final number today. All right.
First.
There's a motion on the floor, so can vote it down and just wait for another, this is what Maggie originally recommended anyway.
I did. My initial recommendation for the motion was actually just to authorize staff in the EAC to come up with that number to then come before you for a vote. So if you
All right,
wanted to amend.
why don't you amend the motion to just have staff in EAC provide us with a number that we will then vote on.
Okay, I will amend the motion to, the EV charge rate will be increased to a rate as recommended by the EAC's new analysis as to the appropriate rate to account for all incurred costs associated with the chargers. So,
No, I think what we need to say is that right now we are just authorizing
Authorize.
the EAC to come up with a number,
Yeah.
which
Okay.
we will vote on later. So we're just authorizing EAC to come up with a proposal, another proposal for us.
I move that the EAC, council authorizes the EAC to come up with another proposal for an appropriate rate to account for all incurred costs associated with the chargers.
Okay. Any objection to the amended motion? Okay. Comment on the agenda motion? Well, it's already been seconded, so I don't think it technically needs one. But any other comment on? Okay, so just to be clear, what we're going to vote on now is we're telling the EAC to work with staff to come up with a newer number for us, which we will then approve at a later meeting.
Yep.
Okay? All those in favor? Okay. All right. That is it for our action items. Reports have been filed and are in the packet. I think all of these reports are actually in the packet. Do have a significant piece of new business, which is there's been a change in the law about compensation for council and mayor in boroughs our size. So, Mr. Walco.
Thank you, President Bush. Yes, this is actually something that I brought up to the attention of some members of council, just as an aside, based upon just the general changes that come about each year through the Commonwealth. A little bit of a background. Right now, the Pennsylvania Borough Code, which covers all boroughs in Pennsylvania, has a provision under 1001E related to the compensation of members of council and also of the mayor. It states that mayor and the council members have compensation set at a certain amount, a max certain amount, based upon the population of those boroughs. Previously, Narberth is less than 5,000, correct? So previously, then, Narberth Borough could have, council members could have a salary of $1,875 per year. And the mayor could have a salary of $2,500 per year. So that's in the Borough Code. In order to have that salary, it needs to be fixed by an ordinance. The change came from the legislature, from the Commonwealth, increasing those amounts. So that 1,875 would have been increased to 3,145, and then the mayor's 2,500 would be increased to 4,190. And then there was another change providing for an alternative compensation that's sort of based upon the meetings that you attend. I imagine that's when people want to stick it to those elected officials that don't show up at meetings. But again, as I mentioned, in order to have this provided, it has to be fixed by ordinance. Other boroughs that I'm aware of that again, the mayor and the council do accept the salary, have it in their ordinance saying that council shall be paid as provided under the code, the mayor shall be paid as provided by the borough code. I looked through our code in Narberth Borough, and we don't have that. So I was a little alarmed at first because I wasn't aware, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the council is not having any salaries right now. So there is no problem, but if there was a desire to provide this, there would need to be an ordinance. And again, right now, many boroughs are amending their existing ordinances that provide for salary to provide for these increases. So again, I brought that up to council just to make sure council was aware of that. And that's really why I wanted to have this discussion with council tonight to make you aware of this increase to a salary that apparently you're not receiving right now.
Yeah, I do appreciate you, John, bringing this up. And before this is posted on social media that council is voting to pay themselves, if we could pause. I would not begrudge them. I think that we should adopt an ordinance to pay council. I would not begrudge someone who accepts it, because I do think it's a measure of privilege. We spend a tremendous amount of hours. I would not accept it, so let's start there. I would donate it back. However, I think of folks who are paying for childcare or family care or work shift nights or hourly wages that give up those times. I mean, you're looking then at I think it's a matter of equity. I think you're looking at a privileged group of people that A, have access to childcare or family care or don't do shift work at night. I wouldn't begrudge anyone for taking that. And again, I think it's a matter of privilege to assume that we're only kind of allowing folks with that access and support to run for council.
I agree with you. I think having that option kind of opens it up to other people who they just don't have the time or the money to be able to spend 20 hours a week on something that is completely unpaid. So just to open it up to, and just to have that representation on council would be important.
My only question is, if they pass something, I'd be happy to not, pass it back. Are there tax implications for
Beat me
us?
to it.
Yeah.
We don't have to take it, right?
Like, even if we don't take it, are we charged with taking it if you give it back to the borough, which is not a 501c3? How does that work?
I mean, if there's no requirement that that you have to take the money and have it be income for you.
Okay.
If you did take it and you wanted to donate it, we're hoping that, for example, Fongi or our organization would then be tax deductible for that amount. But again, if you wanted to stay with the borough, you just wouldn't take it in the first place.
So if you don't take it, you're not going to be charged with having,
no.
You could have taken it, and so we're going to charge you with taxes.
Correct, and that would be something that the borough office, I'm sure, would figure out as to when that money is issued.
Okay.
One thing to keep in mind, which I failed to mention, is that this doesn't become automatic. This would only take effect for when someone is newly elected.
Right.
So if you pass this, I'm not sure who's up for election next, but if it was in place prior to their election, if they were elected, they would then be able to get it. Other people would not. So you wouldn't be giving yourselves increases that start automatically. It only starts for the next person.
Yeah, so that's to allow people the opportunity to vote against you if you vote a taxing. That's generally how these are structured.
Yeah.
You propose a tax increase, it doesn't trigger until the next election, and that's so that people can, to show their displeasure if they wish, and you have to run on that issue. I will point out that tonight we are merely discussing it. There is no action. No action is in order at this time, so. This is merely a discussion.
You would have to, like I mentioned, you don't have the ordinance.
Just to be clear, we all know this, I think. Just to be clear to anybody who may be interested in listening at home, this is a discussion only.
Regardless, okay, if something like that were to be voted in here, and regardless of who is taking it, would that full amount have to be budgeted, and we'd have to set it aside in any case, right? Even if nobody took it.
Yes, that's correct. So if this ordinance were to pass, and then depending on the actual amount that you would select as the compensation, then we would need to build that into the next year's budget. So because this doesn't go into effect immediately, if for example, as a hypothetical, this ordinance were to be adopted this year, it would not apply to anybody who was currently sitting on council or in the mayor's seat. It would only apply to those folks who are elected. So there is an election this year, so whoever comes in next year would be eligible then to take this. So if the ordinance is passed this year, then we would have to allow for that as a budget item in the 2026 budget. And as a measure of caution, not knowing who would take it, who wouldn't take it, we would have to account for the full amount for all of council and the mayor in the budget. So that would be a new line item to budget for that compensation.
Well, wait, we wouldn't have to budget for any of the incumbents because they can't take it, right? Like,
correct.
So it would only be 4.
Yeah.
And
everybody who could take it, we would assume that they would take the full amount. We would budget for them.
you'd only be.
Sure. The only and this we haven't spoken about the kind of legal implications, but if somebody were to resign mid-term and somebody would to come in, would that trigger?
Yeah.
Or would it have to be an elected?
The salaries are payable monthly or quarterly. So I think it would be
Okay, so yeah, we would have.
John, could we also, like, just at the beginning of the term, say, I'm prospectively waiving my salary for my entire term? And then you wouldn't have to budget for it. Like, can't we prospectively waiver to avoid that budgeting issue?
I mean, yes, you could, and I would hope that no one would go back on that because there wouldn't be anything legally preventing you from doing that. But I think what we're talking about is just giving the borough office the knowledge of how much they need to set aside. Right?
But I think they can do that in good faith based on our representations. In other words, I make a representation, I'm waiving it for assuming I get elected in November for a full term, I'm gonna waive it for my term. Maggie can in good faith eliminate that amount from the
again,
budget.
The most we'd be talking about then is $3,145 too. So.
How unusual is it or how usual is it for councilmen in other boroughs to get compensation?
Oh, most of them do. I mean, that's why I was a little worried at first. Again, I wasn't aware that this council was not. And I thought that maybe you were without the ordinance.
That's how this all started. Yeah, that's how this all started.
I did take a look at boroughs our size in the area, and it was something like 9 did pay and 4 did not. So it's, you know,
We're in the minority.
at least in our, you know, on this relatively small sample, there are several that don't, but there are more that do. So.
And just one more comment, because I do think this is important, I think, John, you know, I think there's performative DEI measures, and this is one where it actually is a policy that we could do to encourage folks of diverse socioeconomic, family structure, etc., to volunteer here.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, you know, logistically, how does that work in terms of actual public pressure? You know, if everybody else on council waives their fee and somebody wants to take it, I can see that person feeling a certain level of discomfort. We would want to make sure that they feel comfortable. You know, like, oh, I don't need the money. I don't have kids at home. I don't need the child care. You know, I'm going to be semi-retired. That's fine for me. You should be free to, you know, your situation is different. You should be free to take it. I think we, you know, he's a body.
I think you just did it, though.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's
no, I'm
what we
just
would
saying,
do.
I think we need to be, you know, if we're not going to be
Absolutely.
performant, we have to be deliberate about
Absolutely.
anybody who comes in saying, this is your choice. We're not making it for you.
Let me see if anybody who hasn't spoken wants to say anything.
Yeah, so this is one of those things where I actually agree with the principles that y'all have outlined. I generally tend to think that like legislators writ large should be well compensated, both to guard against like conflicts of interest so that they don't have other forms of income, and also for the reasons that you outlined in that it allows a broader group of people to be able to afford to run for office. In this case, it's not as clear to me just because it's not like a salary, right? It's an additional boost, and so I think that there might be there's some effect there, right? Maybe it helps you kind of cover your child care or whatever things that you need to, but I don't like it. It becomes a little bit more. It's a little bit more muddled for me in terms of like, does it fully reach those ends, or does it produce like other like unnecessary angst in the community? And then the other component of it that makes me just like, I feel like we would need some sort of guardrails is like, you know, the ability for a council member to donate that. It's good in theory as well, but like it also, you know, does that provide the ability for a council member to have a built-in favoritism mechanism? Like, if a council member gets it and turns around and donates it to Fongi, does that make like, you know, then are they kind of like funding Fongi? And then, so there's some of those sorts of things that, you know, so I would say that like, yes, if we were creating a system that I thought was like, yes, it's actually going to kind of accomplish the actual good of what I fully agree with in terms of the principle, it's not clear to me that like that the juice may be worth the squeeze on that for kind of what it is. And especially if it's gonna create implications where we have to budget it and then like account for those dollars, but then, you know, they might not use it anyway, but then we've kind of accounted for that money, so we can't use it on other things. Those are just some of the kind of things that were coming up in my mind.
Ira, did you have anything you wanna, I think you haven't spoken of?
No,
Okay.
I will, I haven't made up my mind about this
All
yet.
right.
So I'm thinking about it. I
Well, let
didn't
me,
eat on the agenda.
say it again, Ira, couldn't really hear you.
I didn't realize it was on the agenda for tonight. It was,
Okay.
I need to think about it a bit more.
All right. So I haven't really spoken yet. I will say that I'm uncomfortable with this idea. I think that if I agree with Mike that if the suggestion is that most of us are going to donate the salaries back, then it's going to be tough on somebody to take the money. It's going to be tough politically and like personally, like even if you did need the money. If you desperately need the money, you'll take it. But if it's like, well, I can really use it, but what's everyone else going to think and what's the community going to think, then you've got pressure against you. So, I mean, I think the way this would work is if we passed it and everybody just took the money, or if we don't pass it and we continue to work, for free. I understand. I think the community is going to be upset about the idea. A certain portion of the community. We already heard
A very
one
small percentage.
I mean, we already heard one comment, and I think we will hear more should we pass this. I also agree with the sentiment that the amount that's being proposed it's enough that people will get upset about it, but it's not really enough to make a difference in somebody's life. It's not a life-changing amount of money. It's some.
It is though. That's where I think that privilege comes in. It is, and I'll use myself as an example too. First of all, I think a very small percentage of people in the community who accuse us of ill will all the time anyway will probably have that narrative. But I'll use myself as an example. If I had to hire for a nurse to come and stay with my father, I would probably not continue with council. And I truly believe the majority of our community, when I said I'm hiring a nurse to stay with my father so I can go to a council meeting, I think our community, our faith communities, our civically engaged communities would say, of course you are. But I'm sorry, Joe.
Yeah.
Jim.
This is just what I want to ask about. I think maybe I misheard it, but I think you mentioned this could also be a stipend. Do we have the option of structuring this as like a purpose-based stipend, for that very purpose, that like a need-based compensation, for childcare or for elder care or something like that, was available to a future council member?
I mean, the language of the code says that it's a salary. It says the salary shall be payable monthly or quarterly for the duties imposed by this department under the Borough Code. Now, whether or not something would be worked administratively from those salaries, that'd be outside of that, but it doesn't give the option under the code to have that compensation be a choosable stipend.
Could you pay someone back for expenses incurred, like for babysitting or something while attending a meeting? Is that, not as part of this?
We'd have to all vote on that.
How would you do that? Send me your babysitter receipt?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then council would have to vote on it.
I've not heard of that before. So I would.
The administrative cost of doing that is not
crazy.
worth
I
it.
don't think it would come up that much, but I do understand.
I wonder if we can all mull this over a little bit. I appreciate John bringing it to our attention and revisit it.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda to vote.
Right.
It was just like thrown at him.
Right.
So I'm still cogitating over the whole thing because
And if I may, so John raised the issue in that the maximum amount was increased by the state. That doesn't mean that if you were to pass this that you would have to have that full amount. So you could always set any amount that you want to in the ordinance. It doesn't have to be the full 3,000. What is the amount? $3,145. So you could always choose that amount or smaller. You just cannot exceed that $3,145.
I'll note that there is a rule that the mayor has to get at least as much or more as council, so that would be.
Yeah, I got 4,000.
Yeah, so we can't set the mayor's getting less than council. But yes, that is true. And most of the boroughs that I looked at had the maximum, but some did not, some had smaller amounts, so.
That's interesting.
Would there be an extra administrative cost if there, like, if there
Paying
were,
Carter.
in terms of doing the salaries for all council members?
Yes, depending on how frequently the dispersion of the salary was to be made, it would just be another administrative, I don't know if it runs through ADP or payroll or if it's a 1099, I don't know the actual structure, but yes, there would be a nominal administrative cost in order to run those numbers and either set up a direct deposit or cut checks for those payments.
You'd also have to pay EIT on it, I think.
I was thinking
Not to
that.
mention income tax, yeah, you gotta pay everything.
It's a salary.
It's a salary.
Yes.
It's your federal
Yes.
taxes too.
Interesting.
All right.
All right.
I'd say let's think about this. If there is a desire to proceed, I would want multiple council members to reach out, like as described in the draft rules of council, I think it's 2 council members. All right, so think about it for a while. I mean, I don't want to act on this immediately, but I think if 2 council members approach me and want us to consider this further, we'll put it on the F&A agenda, and we'll talk more about it then.
And again, to be clear, again, for the public's clarification, this is not something that council, one meeting, can just say, we're gonna do this. It would
No,
require
it's a
the
process.
process of an ordinance, and to be on the agenda, and for it to be advertised, and along those lines as well. So
Yeah, and there will be
Would
ample
only apply
opportunity
to
for the
newly
public
elected
to.
Or re-elected.
if it can then pass, it would only be elected to, as starting at that new term.
And there will be, ample opportunity for people to make public comment about it, and it'll come up at several meetings.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
all
you.
right. That is the only new business we have listed. Any other new business or old business? Any comments for the good of council? Okay. We will have an executive session after this meeting to discuss the disposition of borough real estate, as discussed earlier, and a personnel matter. We will not be returning into regular session after the executive session. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor of adjourning? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Take care.